rid of that, champ.
The Zoe first pick led a lot to Jin Air, ended up being pretty important, wasn't decisive, but it still was a power pick that went on to be piloted to a victory. So let's see what happens in the meta. In game number 2, Shen and Nocturne usually see some attention, and Shen is going to be secondary ban here from Kingzone. You do wonder what Jin Air think about when you consider that we did have to see part of the Master Yi Taric banned in the first game, and Kingzone have already shown that they're willing to cheese with the best of them.
Yeah, they've come prepared with their cheese strats and new meta stuff. Jin Air, though, just going to take away Camille, as they did on the blue side, so just don't want to have Limpsy jump onto that one.
Jin Air probably won't feel like they have to change too much. Our query is really about what Kingzone is looking to do. I wonder if they'd feel pressured into playing Yi Taric if it wasn't banned, for worry of it going over to Jin Air and not wanting to deal with it. Or maybe they've just been practicing that specifically through Peanut. Maybe he has been the one that has been piloting more of that, looking at his solo queue, been playing pretty general, strong stuff.
Yeah.
Jin Air now have that kind of annoying situation. There's a lot of power left on the board. Aurelia, first pick for BDD, sounding pretty fearsome. He looked wonderful. That champion at MSI. The Master Yi Taric duo so far hasn't been attacked. The Mata duo, as they call it in Korea. And the Mata duo will be left open as Zoe is banned based on power level. Does mean Aurelia available if BDD wants it, and that will be a first pick I would like to see.
Yeah, pretty much as obvious as it gets. You called the Shen Nocturne, by the way. That was pretty good. But the Aurelia coming through, that's a thing we can all kind of call here. Pretty standard on the side of a first pick blue side, especially with BDD on your team.
Home teaser already played Nunu Karthus. What we do in Jin Air, you already have a game victory. If you could pull off Yi Taric, you might 2-0 them. They're going to at least consider the Graves, and okay, maybe we'll be spared. The duo, as Graves will be taken in here, could just take a Braum early and surprise them with it.
Yeah.
The weird thing about taking Braum is that you might think, okay, this meta has a lot of range supports, don't know if you need to contest Braum early. Kingzone around their duo, think of another reason their duo fell apart. They are so good at playing with melee supports, and it was Gorilla on a range support, where they were eminently more gankable in game number 1. So if you take the Braum, which they have, nice to see, they do lock in Braum, then if you see a range support, you still feel pretty good about taking Braum into it and ganking the range support. And if you see Tahm Kench, well, Braum and Tahm Kench basically split a lane. Really big fan of this. This is a huge mind game from the first round of picks for Jin Air.
I do like it. Even if they do go into the same strategy, they'll try to say, we can do everything that you did better. And, well, Peanut's going to say, I see your Nidalee, and I raise you a Peanut Nidalee. And the fangirls go wild.
That was a very high octave hit, as Nidalee is here. Peanut's Nidalee, so famous for being undefeated on the Rocks Tigers in 2016. Dropped a couple of games since then, but a legendary Nidalee player. Nidalee Ezreal, maybe their own poke comp of sorts will be engineered, and there is the Ezreal. Whoa, okay. We're getting some normalcy here. How will they make this into a crazy comp, Valdez? Because they did it in game 1. Who knows in game number 2?
They really wanted to go crazy, they could throw Nidalee somewhere out of the jungle, but I think that's even going outside of the meta.
I know what right now the coaching staff is saying. Nidalee was a support at one point. That's a lot of poke in the bot lane. Nidalee Ezreal
throwing spears at Braum, always a lot of fun.
Well, they see this enemy team, and they already have the Braum, so they're happy to take Ornn, which could also be going all over the place. Ornn himself has 4 competitive roles right now.
Yeah.
Mid lane probably the most unlikely, but every other role could certainly be considered.
And they take Ornn over Mundo or anything like that. He gives a lot better hard engage. You already have the Braum on your team, so it can't be countered with that. And it's just, you know, the Mundo just runs straight at you, whereas the Ornn can actually get a multiple-man knockup.
Nice thing about already having a Braum and Ornn is not really seeming like a good time to play Jace, which means that Jace ban could probably be skipped over on the side of Jin Air. They skipped it in game number 1. I think there's no real reason to ban it here either, because they have such good tools to be able to outlast it, both in team fight and in the 1v1. outside chance Kingzone will be playing the top lane Aurelia. When we were prepping for MSI, the only top lane Aurelia we were seeing in solo queue was Khan himself, so it's not really expected. It doesn't feel like Aurelia has the highest power level in the top lane compared to mid and even some of the carry roles. Jin Air do skip over the Jace, span away the Alistar, an old Gorilla faithful.
Yeah. Get rid of that champion for Gorilla. It's good in general with the composition that they're going to have for engaging.
Think about the fact that Tahm Kench is a pretty obvious pick for Kingzone, and it wasn't banned by Jin Air. They banned Engage instead. There's not a lot of Engage yet in the champions from Kingzone. They'd rather ban away more Engage, or even just a support Engage for Gorilla, than to go away from the Tahm Kench. The Rise is locked in. Very likely to be a flex pick between mid lane and also the bot lane.
Yeah. Would expect it, actually, in a weird way, going over to Grace. I mean, Teddy just loves his 80 carries. This would be the first time that he does go onto something that is not a marksman. Thinking about supports here, you were talking about the Tahm Kench, but actually Soraka being hovered in the back line to help out with poke in the bot lane, but also just good sustain across the board.
Another range support that can do very well against melee supports. We do see the likelihood of Braum, but no guarantee that Braum will be in the bot lane. The Mundo was not the problem, so returning to Mundo is just fine for the side of Khan, but double ranged for Kingzone has usually been something that could be attacked by the enemy. They don't have a Tahm Kench to look for the peel. They don't get jungle attention traditionally from Peanut. They go double ranged, and now Jin Air. It looks like they will consider running that mid lane Braum. This would be a pretty good way to attack the Soraka, but the first couple of levels, it's pretty painful.
Yeah, that it is. You generally have to wait until you're 6 to actually make a full-on
Hey, level 3 is pretty good too, and
yeah,
level 3 or level 6, or maybe even a cheesy jungle gank, they will be going for the Braum mid lane strategy themselves. Funny to see it piloted against Kingzone after Kingzone just lost with it.
That would be a good way to show up Kingzone, wouldn't it? Bring in their own little mid-jungle duo and say, hey, we can do it better than you, and actually win the game. That looks exactly like a Peanut, nothing else. But, of course, Peanut fans coming down here in throngs trying to support this guy. I'm sure they were unhappy he wasn't playing in Game 1, but they're getting on the Peanut hype train now in hopes that he can carry in Game 2.
And shout out to the Jin Air fans who also have done a very good job of representing. Interesting draft here where Kingzone do have BDD on that Aurelia. I feel like both solo lanes are very high power ones. The Soraka is always the worry, and the Nidalee can be up and down. Let's see how Kingzone approach stopping there being this boosting from the mid lane of farm and levels onto the Graves. Likes to be the benefactor of one of these strategies. He's been on the supportive side, now he's on the carry side.
Let's see if he can actually do it. Also, want to see if Nova can have another star performance on a new support. He gets his Rakan banned away from him in the last pick, Leona, after seeing all the different picks. So he's happy to go into Leona versus Ezreal Soraka bot lane. Not just going to be about his team fight engaging, but to see if they can get through that rough lane.
Hoping to see a lot of interesting level 1 here. Both teams incentivized to either set up this Graves power farm or find a way to get vision down to contestant camps.
That's going to be the name of the game here, as it was early on in game number 1. Guys, the game is ready, so let's jump into game number 2, Jin Air Greenwings versus Kingzone. More Kingzone fans here tonight, but we'll hope that they can actually come back here and make this an interesting series instead of another 2-0. We've been having a lot of 2-0s so far in summer.
I have a question for you outside of the League of Legends realm a bit, Valdez. Do you know the movie that inspired the skin that is using for Graves?
Which skin is he using right now?
You'll see it on screen eventually. You can get back to the question, but I'm interested to know. It was very topical when the skin was released, which I believe was a release skin for Graves. But interested to know if you know the film reference.
Was it a movie around the time that the skin came out, or was it an earlier movie?
It's definitely around the time the skin came out.
We'll have to see.
He looks a bit weird because, of course, he's got the Guardian over him, but he'll get there.
Do you have sunglasses on?
Yeah.
He does. I actually don't know.
It's Tropic Thunder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a Tropic Thunder skin.
I didn't know that.
From way back when.
Great movie.
Of course, Riot never officially announced that because that would be, don't know about that copyright thing, but
well,
anyway.
You just gave up the secret now, Papa, on stream, thanks to you.
Ben Stiller's coming for them. Well, double ranged and a level 1 onto the Leona. No further for battle anymore, so it's going to be the Aftershock on the Leona.
Thinking about trading a little bit here is Nova. I mean, he does have that Aftershock for some extra stats after that stun, but does have to be careful. And this is a lot of what we've seen in Game Number 1, guys. If you guys are new to this, just the Graves, Braum in the mid lane. Graves and Braum gonna take the buffs, and Graves will take all the farm.
But predictably, double-ranged Soraka Ezreal will take the level 2 lead and make bot lane very sad for a little while. You did mention it with Scuttle number 1. It's just a ward on Scuttle. It looked like Scuttle number 1 was down, but it's going to be a ward on the Scuttle. Does mean that there's always the chance of gank assist and playing around the inevitable ganks, the global taunt that a Soraka bot lane has. A bit of a Teemo flavor about that is something that's going to be tricky for Praying Gorilla because they certainly weren't the best at playing around ganks in game number 1.
It's very true. Well, at least Peanut going to be able to secure one of these Scuttle Crabs up in the top side, and that bottom one still has not been secured here. Actually trying to go for a bit of a 2v2 in the mid lane. Umti getting a bit low, but a good stun from the Braum comes out onto BDD. And now Peanut here to help out in the mid lane.
That's what you have to do. You have to provide the backup, but it's after the Scuttle was already claimed. It might actually be double Scuttle for the team that only has the single jungler, which is not often what you see. The Peanut trying to find a route. He would have dealt with this strategy in solo queue. I know a lot of you guys haven't seen Master Yi Taric in your games, but because the communication between the players all know themselves very well is high. In Challenger, it happens more as bot lane.
Not sure about this. Nova getting a little bit too far up the lane. Just a bit of communication error. They saw the spears coming in. They could have predicted that Peanut was doing that Scuttle Crab, but Nova, in the meanwhile, level 2, trying to get some stuns down, is forced to flash.
That's a really big gank for Peanut because taking Leona's flash in particular is something that will relieve so much pressure from Soraka in particular in the bottom side. This means that Nova, if he chooses to go in, only can go one way. He also can't extend his engage range in a cute way with flash into Q or E, so very, very big summoner to be down. And that will allow Prey and Gorilla, unless they find an enemy jungler in their face, to kind of have their way with the Ryze Leona.
And you can see Peanut just so much freedom around the bottom side too. Gonna steal that Gromp and now go back after 30 creeps. Good start for him.
Bye, Gorilla. Well, there's nothing else to talk about.
Yeah. Prey not trying to match with the skins. It's a little bit unfortunate.
That's true. They could have had Star Guardian synergy.
I know.
Maybe it's a metaphor for how the team's been doing.
I know. Well, I mean, Prey and Gorilla had a lot of synergy in how far up the lane they were going together.
The buddy system was employed to give over the double kill.
Yeah. So would have liked the Star Guardian synergy as well, but not going to happen.
Players are usually pretty particular about skins. Not everyone, but a lot of people just get used to practicing on a single one and stick with it. So I can understand that. BDD's Irelia was the first one to really show us the way when it came to the mid lane Irelia. There wasn't the first mid lane Irelia play. There was one previously in MSI, but I thought BDD's mastery was pretty clear. Shahu had a good game. I thought BDD had a really great one. In the end, of course, wasn't enough to allow them to pick up the trophy in that tournament, but it is actually, you know, you remember I mentioned BDD's interview where he said, I asked for a carry champion after playing a facilitator. He's done it again. He's gone straight back to the Irelia. That's his carry champion of choice. He wants to do some heavy lifting and, well, can't do much on Braum. So I guess that's at least one thing that BD is being consistent on.
Yeah. And there was a little thing that happened in the mid lane that I think is important. Generally, it's the Braum that's catching waves for the Graves that, you know, the waves are being pushed in by the enemy mid laner. and you catch all those minions, and it's pushing towards you, and Umti gets to farm it on the Graves. But the opposite actually happened, and I'll hold that thought as Aurelia's level 6, trying to engage on here 2v2, but Teddy makes his way up the river, and so they're going to have to stop that gank. But actually the double stun, and Peanut thinking about another spear, will go wide. And so no kills will come through.
Wastes a lot of Teddy's time. That's why they went for that little cute re-engage there. Very surprising to see Teddy get the roam off when they were under turret for the majority of the time. They give up a lot of lane control to make this play happen, but that's why it was so creative by Junior. I like the attempt because they're trying to shut down BD just as he hit 6.
He was able to hit 6 first as well. Just that point I was saying before, they actually denied a lot of that pushing mid-wave that was coming down because of the cute little play. Peanut sticking around a little bit longer to freeze it there for BDD, who continued to freeze it for quite a while. Almost worked out. It looks like Kingzone is really thinking long and hard about every little move in this game and are very, very focused so far.
I would say the big impact so far when it comes to what it's got the enemy team is, all right, let's hold that point.
Empty's level 7 here. Peanut with not too much health is just going to throw a couple spears and ward off Umti in the bottom lane.
There's an item lead of a Caulfield's Warhammer, but not the entire Warrior Enchant, so there was still a chance that Peanut could pull something off. But what I want to draw your attention to is that Peanut's farm is about what? He's going to be behind the Graves, and that's expected, but he's going to have to be a little bit more creative about his pathing, because a lot of the camps he's used to getting, like the Raptors, are going to be the ones going to be easily pathed to by Jin Air and counter-jungled. So where Peanut goes on the map, getting those items on Nidalee, because remember, Nidalee's power farming is one of the reasons she is relevant, because she gets items pretty fast, instant clearing the jungle. There's no cap there, she can't clear it.
Doing a decent job of that so far, but take a look at the gold. As is expected, the Graves is ahead of everybody else on the Rift right now. Although Kingzone do have that lead, as BDD's not too far behind. I know it's still early, but I feel like that little move early on really helped him.
Jin Air in the late game, if it goes that far, maybe we don't even have to talk about that. This time someone hits an ult. That's probably feeling good after last game. But
yeah,
do consider that Jin Air have mixed damage. They have Graves Rise, not Graves Ash, which is the duo that was on the side of Kingzone when they were running the Braum Graves strategy. Also consider they have a 3-man front line for largely Nidalee Ezreal poke, so they're going to be able to shrug off a lot of poke. To me, Aurelia has to be the team fight star in the late game if we do get to a late game of some level of normalcy.
It's going to be exciting to see Teddy as well on something new, right? He's not going to be on a marksman this time around. Will be on the Rise that we've seen have a lot of success. If the game can go in your favor, that Rise really begins to pop off.
Consistent damage. Got to get it from somewhere. The Graves largely about burst, and Rise has ever since that first rework so many years ago. It's so hard to talk about Rise reworks because there's been so many, but the let's take a guess, 2012 rework? Ever since then, he's been the machine gun mage, and that has been how you've been able to find consistent damage in this composition, because we already saw that 400 CS Graves wasn't doing that much in game number 1.
They had a decent front line in terms of the Ornn, and all the damage that went onto him was just soaked up, and everybody else was good at keeping their distance, right? The Nidalee and the Zoe in particular, very good at that. Lucian could always culling and then jump in when he had the opportunity. So the Graves, relatively short range outside of his burst combo, not really able to land some efficient damage in those team fights.
Prey went a different build. He went Sheen early and didn't go for the tier, so it's actually going to be a later tier transformation in this game. Wanted the Sheen to actually punish Teddy Nova with stronger Q. We've seen Bang do this in the past. There's different approaches you can always take with the Ezreal, but the mere amount of timings have been getting pretty early recently, Valdez, and it'll be a little bit later in this game.
So far, once again, kind of another Jin Air game in the fact that there's no action in the first 11 minutes, nobody going down, and even though Drake's being taken, with that pushing advantage they had in the bottom lane, still they had to deal with Graves Braum, and so they didn't have an opportunity, but maybe they'll consider it now, but no, they're just going to put down some vision.
Very little to talk about. The Graves team, once again, has been able to pick up CS pretty unhindered. We haven't seen any attempts at trying to catch them at camps, and they haven't really been taking the bot side camps. It's the only place where Kingzone have a bit of a push going on. Irelia farming up. Scaling-wise, you kind of look at it and you say, Kingzone have a bit more traditional scaling, but they don't have a huge scaling lead, I'd say, over Jin Air. Look at the damage dealt as we rewind them a little bit. Irelia's actually only done 200 more damage than Braum. That's pretty depressing.
I mean, probably Braum just landing a couple of Qs, and that's about it. But, yeah, Irelia, BDD just landing some stuns as well. So, in general, not much action at all. Really, the highest damage we see there are the ones that are in solo lanes or trading in the bottom lane. And Peanut going to be the first to go for a big objective. He goes for the Rift Herald very early on in this game. 12 minutes. Could certainly get the ball rolling. That snowball for his team if he could secure it.
And it'd also be against expectation when the enemy team has 2 people in the jungle most of the time. To be 3-1 up in terms of Rift Scuttle and take the Rift Herald is actually just something you wouldn't expect. That's where the hyper farm strategy might have not dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. Praying Gorilla showing a lot of respect because they know that Graves and Braum were bot side. And this early in the game, when it's only a lost chapter for AP, it doesn't matter if there's a buff on that AP to turret damage calculation. They're not going to take a lot of relevant turret damage. Turret will still stay very healthy. And now that Peanut's back, they can get back into lane. It's a good decision-making from Praying Gorilla. They weren't showing that in game number 1, the sort of adaptation we need to see in game number 2.
That's certainly a good move, and you'll notice now that with the Ryze bottom lane, it's not like you're trying to babysit a Kog'Maw or any kind of weaker marksman. You got a guy who can kind of solo in the lane, get a nice wave clear down when it hits the turret. So Nova being very proactive with that duo in the jungle, and so they're going to try to even flash in and get those kills, and that's really what happens when you unlock this Leona.
And that was what was avoided by this early gank denying the flash. Nova had to flash defensively very early. That was a wide use of the stun. Whoa! I always forget that it's always as long as you're able to cast, and that was like max cast range.
Yeah.
Eddie and Nova returning to bot side. Nova's level 6, and Gorilla really doesn't want to walk there.
Oh, they're going to flash on in. Gorilla in a lot of trouble. Here we go. There's the combo, the E into the Q with the Ignite coming in. The Wish is not enough, and First Blood will go over to Ryze for Teddy.
At that time, wasn't taking the widest route possible. This time, sure, it was a very aggressive dive, but they had the directed CC coming through from the Ryze. Teddy committed. Nicely performed by Jin Air.
Even earlier on, just clearing out all the vision with the help of Braum and Graves makes it so easy for them to sneak on in and allow that potential to go for that kind of dive. So nicely done. Certainly getting their Ryze online as soon as possible.
Gorilla went for heal. We see Soraka's often go barrier or maybe even consider cleanse when you're against Ryze Leona, the most targeted CC you could ever ask for. Don't even need to hit a skill shot when the Ryze can get in there with the W. So went for the extra healing for his ally. See, Gorilla could have gone towards and hugged the wall bot side, and then it would have taken longer, and Ezreal would have been faster to react. So they were very, very respectful around the first attempt at this sort of a dive, not so much for the second, just a pathing mistake by Gorilla.
That's not what you want to see. At least they do have Peanut showing up, the sub here in the jungle, so on even going to flash away. And even though they do get First Blood on the side of Jin Air, First Blood turret will go over to Kingzone with that Rift Herald.
It's a sign of the fact that top side and through their Nidalee, they've gotten more than perhaps you would have expected in a scenario like this where Irelia has been completely unable to react. And consider that Graves' farm is actually not mind-blowing. He's only 40 ahead of the mid laner rather than monstrously ahead. If you put the numbers together, you're getting about 280 farm on Irelia and the Nidalee. You're not getting that much between the Braum and the Graves. So it's been a good farming game here, despite all the impact on the bot side for Jin Air.
Yeah. You'll notice now that once again trying to unlock this duo and potentially dive into the bot lane with the turret that's very, very low. They were trying to rotate down here, but good response this time around from Praying Gorilla.
2 out of 3 times they were able to avoid the gank. Did fall the one time to an avoidable mistake. In the mid lane, turret has fallen low, but won't be taken down. You're always afraid of an Aurelia under turret turning with the 2 forms of CC and that ultimate being such a game changer. Longer the mid lane turret stays up, the better for the side of Kingzone, and they might even be able to pull off a lane swap, not to the mid lane, as Ezreal's going to pick up the farm on the bot side. And so far, we track on the minimap.
Khan down here just going to eat up all these creeps, be pretty happy about that one. But with no mid laner, as Aurelia goes back, it looks like actually Umti and Grace will do a number onto this turret. We'll take it down.
15 minutes and the mid lane turret going down, not against the hyper farm strategy, but with the hyper farm strategy. So still going to be plenty of gold growing for Graves in this particular game. I got to admit, my PTSD, or perhaps my obsessive compulsive disorder, my OCD might be set in, because I really want Soraka to finish her first item, so there's a line of Merc Treads.
Oh, we're getting there.
Needs 1 completed item to get the Merc Treads into the 2nd spot.
Can finish off that support item, and I guess it would happen.
Please, Gorilla. I need it.
He's got the Ruby Crystal, right? He's 1 step away. 550 gold.
Give me the 5 Mercs in a row.
Can't really see that kind of synergy on the opposite side.
No, sadly not.
Two purple items in a row, Abyssal Mask and then the Neomu's Ghostblade. That's about as close as you're going to get.
Take stock of where the game's at. 1,500 gold lead. That's what we've seen. These hyper farm strategies do lead to a small disruption in gold. But the counter argument, the pro hyper farm strategy is Braum and Leona don't need as much gold, and they're the ones that are going to be a bit more emaciated compared to the enemy team. So it's pretty much even. A line ball game. Kingzone grouping in the mid lane. They do have Ezreal Soraka to try to poke under this turret. No one's really threatening an objective, though, so the game petering out a little bit as we're a minute 40 from the next straight.
Yeah. Kingzone don't have the same kind of dive threat that Jinner had in game number 1 with the Rakan and the Zoe and all that good stuff, but just 1 Scrying Plant is enough for Ryze to kind of freak out and lay down a ward over there on the right side of the mid lane. Always got to be careful and check your flanks.
New Age Ryze build, note, no Rod of Ages, went for tier into the Archangels. There's a lot of disagreement on what the 2nd item could be, as, oh boy.
Okay, well, Nova forgot he's playing against Ezreal. That's unfortunate. Loses his flash, not really going to happen. Although the engage here onto Empty, nice unbreakable by Grace to deny any further engagement. And now here comes Khan thinking about another solo kill in the bottom lane. Is going to have to back off, though, as his ultimate is eventually going to peter out here.
I've got to say, it's the most explosive trade of ults you'll see in a tank versus tank matchup.
It's not bad. Mundo's a lot of fun when you're playing him.
Sounds
not
like I was going to
him.
say, sounds like a Mundo player right there. As you know, I'm a Mundo banner.
Yeah.
I was banning him before he was in LCK. Turns out my Pantheon jungle doesn't do so well against Dr. Mundo. Sad boys.
Yeah. Or, you know, tanks in general.
Well, that one in particular is a handful.
Yeah.
Something that, hopefully, if you're a Kingzone fan, Janelle will find as the game goes on. Been very, very passive. It definitely didn't have that 14-minute explosion that stopped this comp from working. And I guess the first time we will see the power farm team not fall behind meaningfully in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's a great spot for them. Not so much for Teddy, though. They're trying to engage onto him. The slow comes in. Spear not going to land. The Realm Orb will get him to safety. TP as well will discourage the rest of Kingzone from going in there.
Seraph's Embrace transform couldn't have come any later for the side of Teddy. Important that he had it there. That's why he had enough health to not go down. He backs away. Go for the recall. It is teleport, remember, from Teddy, so he can have a lot of lane presence. So this yesterday on Ryze bot lane as well. Teleport marksman. Teleport bot laners, I guess we have to call it.
Yeah, he's not a marksman. As much as Ryze is trying to become a marksman with that sustained damage, his machine gun spells. Not a real machine gun, but don't tell him that.
Morellonomicon going to be that 2nd item. Could have been a couple from the Blasting One and Amp Tome that he had, but very important with the Soraka on the Rift. Italy as well. Dual healing threats makes a lot of sense that we do see Morellonomicon come in. When it comes to Peanut, there's a lot of different itemization you see on Nidalee. When there was a lot of Nidalee in solo queue in spring, but no games in the professional scene, this Lichbane early was pretty common, so it seems like Lichbane will come through at some point. See a Sheen in the inventory for a bit more burst.
Cloud Drake essentially handed over to Kingzone there as they had all the vision double control ward around that area, as well as Rise kind of roaming up towards the top side of the map. And they just sneaked that one from beneath their noses.
Khan doing a bit of counter jungling. It's up 50 CS just with no jungle intervention in the Ornn matchup. And this matchup's been going good for the Mundo a couple of times in a row. Blue buff doesn't really provide him anything other than shorter ult cooldown. Already has basically no cooldown in his other abilities. What does it all mean? Where the game goes, I guess, what I'm paid to tell you guys, because what's happened on the screen has been pretty minimal. Team fights are going to be very interesting. I think the Rise does shoulder enough consistent damage that you don't just straight up lose in terms of not having enough damage. The game goes on the side of Jeanette, despite having those two supports. I think Aurelia is honestly the big wild card as Khan decides he wants to turret dive.
He just gets angry from time to time. He's like, I think I'm just going to go for the kill.
He got a teleport out of it.
There's the teleport and the Ornn ultimate. Will it complete the teleport? Here comes the Rise, but a blasting plant might be able to get. I love that positioning, though, over the top and hitting the blasting plant, too. Sohan, though,
do they kill him, though?
Yeah, he's still on the run. There's the flash on in. The wish coming in here from Gorilla, and here's Nova to try to help out. Will be enough to take down the mini-boss of Mundo.
Yeah, mini-boss achieved. The big boss of Kingzone halfway done as well. So when it comes to any sort of monster encounter game, they know they're near that end game. They're near the victory. The series victory that'll be oh so sweet for Jinair. They were able to take them down. The mini raid boss goes down. Jinair really only gets the ability to put down some vision from it. That's another good feel for the team as they keep that gold lead very slender on the side of Kingzone.
Yeah, you know, it gives another kill over to Teddy, who's trying to scale up as fast as possible. He finishes Morellonomicon just in time for a big fight up against a Mundo, right? So he's in a really happy spot. They generally want to get the carry gold onto Teddy, and they're doing just that.
They had this last season, but now with the power farm, you see what the extra farm gives when you talk about the 1v1 9-minute warrior enchant. As we're looking through just the history of these items along and just big pickups every few minutes. That's what happens. Every shopping trip, 1,000 gold, basically.
Yeah. Just about every, 5 to 7 minutes, you're going to pick up a new item, and that's pretty consistent.
Disagreement
nice
on the
ratio.
build here compared to Cuz in game number 1. It's Yomu's Ghostblade Phantom Dancer, whereas we had a rapid fire cannon. And no lethality, if I remember correctly, from Graves in game number 1.
He picked up a Maul Malmortius
That's
in
right.
game number 1, too. He was going up against Zoe as well as the Nidalee, so felt like he needed that to deal with the burst, but definitely took away a bit of his damage.
And UMT wants to be a frontliner. That's what the Phantom Dancer does provide. It's always been considered on Graves. Graves, probably one of the most utility among AD champions when it comes to what he chooses to build. That's Dance Graves been a thing at one point. Basically every other item can be considered. Ended up with an Infinity Edge by the end, did Cuz, but wasn't really amplifying damage as he needed.
Yeah. Will Khan dive the bottom turret again?
Yes.
Every time he's got his ultimate, I'm pretty sure that he can do that, but especially now that Teddy does not have his TP, and he knows that it will be one-on-one. I'd be feeling a bit better about that.
I'd actually really like to see an Executioner's Calling on UMT, because at some point, Graves does nothing to Mundo at all, and at least reducing his healing would represent something. If you'd gone for Black Cleaver and an Executioner's, you would have had utility, but UMT's basically saying, I want to kind of Yomu's Ghostblade past the Graves.
Okay, Arcane shifting into the enemy is generally a mistake, but Prey does a bit of poking damage there, has to use his QSS. This fight is never going to end, guys. Khan versus Sohan in the bottom lane.
Khan generally wins it, but has to take turret damage in order to make it happen. Prey keeps being super cheeky at. Never be 100% sure it's the right move, especially with his QSS down. Trying to create pressure as Mundo piles on the farm bot side.
We're beginning to get into a weird moment where it's kind of 4v4 in the mid lane. But look at this, Peanut coming on down to the bottom side, trying to get that forever slow. Nice knock up on a Peanut, but it might just delay the inevitable. The tower being tanked forever by Khan, and Peanut coming in here should be able to pick up the kill. There it is. Gonna finally take down Sowan.
Just Mundo thinks that's why they were willing to buy time in the mid lane, because they thought eventually they'll be take down that turret. They're gonna keep pushing up, and Jinner will probably have to walk over to Baron to stop them just continue pushing.
Well, they're thinking about it, a little bit of hesitation once again, but as you mentioned, just giving away an inner turret here, it seems like.
And Jinner realized they can't even imitate a Baron taking teams. They'll lose 2 turrets from this play. Good play from Kingzone. They kept them interested in mid. And eventually Khan felt like the time came. It was a nice searing charge to double knock up, and he thought maybe, just maybe, Sowan would find a way to turn it around, but with no flash, he couldn't escape. Second blue buff in a row is stolen away. Have Kingzone done enough to outlast, to give Graves all this farm, shrug it off, and take down game 2?
Definitely have that potential, getting their carries fed up as well, even a Zhonya's onto Peanut. A little bit of extra survivability over to the Nidalee, foregoing that Lichbane for now. Will be that third item that we do see coming in. But overall, this is, I feel like I'm casting, you know, 8.1 all over again. 3 kills at 30 minutes is what we're nearing here, Papa Smithy.
That's why it's going to be all about the team fight. That's why from very early in the piece, we had to wonder about where it's going. And Mundo Aurelia is a fearsome thing for Ryze or Graves to deal with. They may have Braum, Leona, Ornn. You just still feel like they may not have enough CC to halt the dive that will come from that duo. On the bot side, they're able to pick up a second Mountain Drake, so at least when the Baron start does come from Jinner, they have a lot of damage, take it down.
Yeah, he'll have that Ryze just shelling out abilities, and the Graves going to be super fed up in hopes that they can burst down that Baron. They essentially only have 2 damage dealers for that, but hey, it might be enough with double Mountain. But in the meantime, Kingzone able to break down this middle tier 1. Gonna be a nice objective, evening up the middle turrets here.
Nice thing about having this Nidalee, Soraka, Ezreal trio is there's a lot of places on the map that Kingzone had no vision of, but when you have a siege comp, you can just power down the actual things you can see, which is the open mid lane, and try to take objectives there. So they're trying to stay as safe as possible. Stay in the open, keep the buddy system going. Not really any flank threat. You're not really worried because Mundo is buying all the time away from Ornn, and the Leona wasn't in position to pull off a flank. So for now, they're keeping it in the lane, they're keeping it pushing, and it's allowed Kingzone to once again re-engineer a bit of a gold lead.
Now, we'll take a look up at Mundo's items. Always a bit of a scaling timer we want to look at. And did finish that adaptive helm. Going for the Sunfire next. Completes it as I say that. 4 items just about completed up, and that Mundo, he was already scary when he was diving Sowan 5 minutes ago, but you guys will be welcomed to the real Mundo challenge a little bit later on.
You know he's a big boy. He's certainly spent a lot of time bulking up. He is basically at raid boss status. I wonder if you buy more magic resist or you just buy a thorn mail and laugh the direction of the Graves. He probably already does anyway, because Graves will take an infinite amount of time to kill him. He'll keep reloading and just not be able to do enough consistent damage to kill him.
Yeah.
So Mundo is going to be a handful, and that means that Baron might be the start here. At some point, you can just park Mundo on the Baron, and you know he can turn. You know that he has a lot of damage onto the structure. And even if he's flanking, yeah, good luck peeling him away.
Yeah. It's great to have a meta where we get League of Legends' thickest tank back into the thick of things, but Prey trying to go 1v1 here.
Speaking of the thick tank.
Yeah, here he comes, going on to Teddy. Can you save him here? Khan, it seems like he is going to respect it for now, but doesn't really care as he's just taking Tomps away at the front line even and just not take damage.
Nope. He's reached that point, Valdez, especially at 30 minutes without that many damage items to answer him. He'll tank turrets, he'll tank champions. He gives no mundos at all, Valdez, about what's happening here.
He goes where he pleases, underneath the turret with no minions. Be my guest. He'll go in there and he'll do the job. And that was after he challenged 4 champions and had Prey and Peanut shelling from the back line, so he can essentially do whatever he wants, and he hasn't even built his 6th item yet.
Scary times, and I don't even think the Infinity Edge on the Graves will answer too much of that. Power farmed Graves, maybe the way to beat it is to just outlast it. Just say, all right, why not another 400 CS? You're item capped, what are you gonna do? They've now got this Mundo, who could just straight up win the game, and if you ask Khan, he'll probably say, well, I could have won game 1, but my teammate's a bit too heavy. Because he certainly had a good game, only first went down right at the end of it. Prey on the Ezreal instead of the Ashe this time. We'll soon have to play the Ruin King. Not convinced that the Nilly's going to be pumping out damage, but maybe your heals will be enough. Feels like the Baron is the only thing stopping Kingzone from powering through the base.
Yeah. The question is, you know, we talked about Jhin Air scaling just a bit, the Graves and the Rise especially, but will they ever have enough damage even after hitting 6 items apiece up against Mundo Soraka, right? You can have all the anti-healing you want and all the items you want, but at some point, you know, I haven't tested it myself in the practice tool, but is there actually enough numbers, enough DPS to take out that combo?
What is the rest of his team doing while the enemy team needs 13, 14 seconds to kill the Mundo?
Yeah.
I think they could eventually kill him.
Eventually.
Remember, I'm using the word think. I'm not actually making a definitive statement here.
Can't actually say. We haven't had a professional game that's gone to, you know, 40, 45 minutes of Mundo and actually has him. And here he comes again from behind this time, trying to get on top of Nova. How do you get away from this? He doesn't have his flash. It goes down, and so does the Nova. And that will be one. Ornn is going to be silenced, not able to knock him. And look at Khan. He never stops diving the turrets. This thick boy is going to get to the back line and take them all out. Down will go BDD, and Khan's ultimate finally is over. But as we said before, there is just not enough time to take out this Mundo, and he's still alive. Soraka going to keep him up forever. There's going to be the ace, and Kingzone finally have that tank to do the damage in the back line.
And Khan's finally found the tank for him. It's Dr. Mundo. He was the one secretly who was hyper-scaling in this game. We should have known with the repeated turret dives bot lane, but he gives absolutely no Mundos. Who needs a minion wave when he got one Doctor?
Just gonna sit there. Got Soraka for the health too, and a medic in your back pocket, and that's gonna be it, guys. Kingzone take away game number 2, and we will go to game number 3 on the backs of Mundo.
All right, now we know that it was Mundo against the Grays, not Mundo with the Grays. It's just one line. The coach got it wrong, but they got it right the second time out. Kingzone DragonX will not be rolled over by Jhin Air. Seems like it doesn't really matter how much farm you give the Graves. My initial skepticism holds true of 400 CS Graves seems to remind me of 100 CS Graves, and that's not a good look.
Yeah, and as I said before, will there ever be enough damage to take out Khan? It didn't even have to hit 40, 45 minutes. He was already a big enough tank, and the only line I want to hear from the coach now is ban Dr. Mundo.
Griffin was the first team of the pro teams in Korea to understand that Mundo is a power pick, not just a counter pick. And now Kingzone may have lost once with it, but the second game was pretty damning. Dr. Mundo moves to 4-1 on the season, and ban Mundo in solo queue is your takeaway, guys. Just to let you know, Dr. Mundo, I was there. I'm the hipster Mundo banner, and that's because I saw enough games like that in solo queue to know.
Ban it in solo queue, ban it in pro play, and this is exactly the reason. Nova even flashes away, but the second another cleaver hits, you're just not getting away. It's not going to happen.
Really? You're considering the fact that he was also CC'd a few times under turret. Let's count how many turret shots he took. 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, he deletes from turret. That was unfortunate.
Yeah.
And
so
then BDD took here. One. So rude. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He took the double turret shots. He probably took about, are we going to guess 20, 26 shots probably?
That was even before those final 2 Nexus turrets. I hope that the chat was counting with us as well, because you know they're good at that. But, I mean, that's what you get. After 30 minutes, Mundo is going to take over the game and carry the team. Khan finally found a way to do it for his team that's been slacking a little bit. But, guys, we'll go to a break, and we'll come back with game number 3.